You won't believe what music our kids are listening to nowadays. Like when I was in high school, we had such major themes as I want to rock and roll all night and party every day. I checked a book I have at home to see what was on the charts when I was Kyle's age, and it was Kung Fu fighting and doing the hustle. Today we've heard music from three bands, Creed, Green Day, and Incubus. And they're part of a music style called alternative. It's kind of a catch-all category that ranges from punk to heavy metal to folk and electronic. It's more about attitude than the actual musical style. It's eclectic, individualistic, and rebellious. Kind of like Unitarian Universalism. We're not always sure of what we are, but we are sure of what we are not. We are an alternative religion. There's a lot of anger in this music, just as many people come into our faith because they are fed up with the culture that they've been forced into. The Green Day, the first song we sang, screams down with the immoral majority. And I imagine some of us in this congregation have said that ourselves. They're reacting to rejection. And many of us have felt rejected by the dominant culture and religion. In another song called Reject, Green Day writes, "Who are you to tell me what I am and what's my master plan? And what makes you think it includes you? Self-righteous, well, stop flatting yourself, because when the smoke clears, here I am." We, as a religion, tell the overwhelming majority that there is an alternative way to look at things. In the song we sang earlier, talks about a face in the crowd, a song against the mold. UUs have a long history of believing that individual resistance can make a difference. Thoreau was all alone in that jail cell when he protested slavery. He was, in the words of Green Day, one light, one mind, lashing in the dark, rising by the silence of 1,000 broken hearts. When we stand for peace, justice, and religious freedom, we are choosing to be part of the minority that actually takes these things seriously instead of just an excuse to wave a flag. If our voice is silenced, then the majority may run like lemmings into the sea. Martin Luther King, in his essay, The Strength to Love, wrote about the need to be maladjusted. He said, "Success, recognition, and conformity are the bywords of the modern world, where everyone seems to crave the anesthetizing security of being identified with the majority. Human salvation lies in the hands of the creatively maladjusted." UUs can be the creatively maladjusted in our society, marching out of time to our own beat now, the only way we know. Though our anger can't be ignored, it cannot be our only strategy. King said that we should combine the toughness of a serpent and the softness of a dove, a tough mind and a tender heart. And this metaphor about being wise as serpents and gentle as doves comes from Jesus. And the Unitarians in Transylvania, or now modern Romania, have used it as a symbol of their faith. And you may look at this afterwards, but there's a serpent with a dove in the center, because to survive for 400 years as a religious minority through all the other religions that passed through and through communism, That was a motto they took upon themselves, to be as wise as serpents and gentle as doves. Now, Green Day doesn't show much tenderness. One might even say that they have anger issues. But for tenderness and thoughtfulness, I turn to the group Incubus, which Kyle sang their song earlier. Now, their name itself is interesting, because an incubus is a demon that comes at night to impregnate virgins. Now, I figured these demons were a convenient excuse in the Middle Ages. A pregnant nun could be explained without incriminating the priest. On its album, Make Yourself, which seems like a very Unitarian Universalist title, Make Yourself, Incubus reacts against the religion being thrust upon them. They write, I feel empathic about not being static and not buying philosophies that are sold to me at a steal. Just when you thought it was safe to think, in comes mental piracy. What I'm looking for cannot be sold to me. I wish they would stop trying, because what I want and what I need is and always will be free. And in the song that Kyle sang, they admit their fear of going it alone, but choose self-reliance anyway. The lyric goes, sometimes I feel the fear of uncertainty ringing clear, and I can't help but ask myself how much I'll let the fear take the wheel and steer. It's driven me before, and it seems to have a vague, haunting mass appeal. But lately, I'm beginning to find that I should be the one behind the wheel. Whatever tomorrow brings, I'll be there with open arms and open eyes. The open eyes mean that we must be aware. We must look for ourselves, for the truth. We are in the driver's seat, deciding which direction we go. We choose among alternatives. Open eyes mean that we are ready to examine what is presented to us as truth. With snake eyes, we can see the soft underbelly of those who wish to stand above us. We must be wise as snakes, but gentle as doves. Open arms are ready to embrace, ready to make peace. Unitarian Universalism means that we are prepared to seek alternatives. We question authority. We subvert the dominant paradigm. We sing, it ain't necessarily so. We don't go along to get along. Like Incubus, we decide not to be one of the hive. Like Green Day, we are cut from the herd. The creed song that Gail and I sang to begin encouraged us to take this life and hold it by the hand and greet the world with arms wide open. Unitarian Universalism is about radical inclusiveness. That is why it is an alternative to most religions. Political and religious leaders often motivate their followers with fear. Fear of everlasting punishment, fear of evil dictators. Different faiths are supposed to be suspected. The international community can't be trusted. In order to be American, we are told we cannot dissent. We cannot resist. I think it is our duty as Americans to resist, to say that we will be honorable and not strike first in a war, to say that we will demand liberty and justice for all. The UU principles ask us to respect the inherent worth and dignity of every person, to accept one another, and to encourage spiritual growth. I think the word encourage is so important. We need to say to people, don't be afraid of your freedom. Other faiths call for submission or devotion. We offer a more challenging alternative: self-reliance and skepticism. Look for a better way. Rather than deciding what is wrong or right with other people, we offer the alternative: to find what is right with others. Instead of defining how they must be excluded, we offer the alternative of welcoming gays, women, heretics of every stripe. Instead of censoring those who disagree, we look for alternative opinions. Ours is a challenging faith. Some people mistakenly think that Unitarian Universalism is easy because people are free to believe what they want. They forget that we also ask our members to question everything they believe. It's fun to be skeptical of other people's opinions. It's frightening to be skeptical of our own. But Unitarian Universalist Robert Weston encourages us to cherish our doubts, for doubt is the attendant of truth. For truth, if it be truth, arises from each testing stronger and more secure. Those who would silence doubt are filled with fear. Let us not fear doubt, but let us rejoice in its help. William Channing said, wow, why don't we turn to 592, the reading that I skipped? I was just doing this as an alternative order of service. And let us read the words of Channing. I call that mind free which masters the senses, which recognizes its own reality and greatness. I call that mind free which jealously guards its intellectual rights and powers, which does not content itself with a passive or hereditary faith. Which opens itself to light whensoever it may come, which receives new truth as an angel from heaven. I call that mind free which is not passively framed by outward circumstances, and is not the creature of accidental impulse. Which discovers everywhere radiant signatures of the infinite spirit, and in them finds help to its own spiritual enlargement. I call that mind free, which protects itself against the usurpations of society, and which does not cower to human opinion. I call that mind free, which resists the bondage of habit, which does not mechanically copy the past, nor live on its old virtues. I call that mind free, which sets no bounds to its love, which wherever they are seen delights in virtue and sympathizes with suffering.
Which recognizes in all human beings the image of God and the rights of God's children, and offers itself up a willing sacrifice to the cause of humankind.
I call that mind free, which has cast off all fear, but that of wrongdoing, and which no menace or peril can enthrall.
Which is calm in the midst of tumults, and possesses itself with all else belongs.
Channing was one of the founders of Unitarianism back in the early 19th century. I come from the generation that's probably best characterized as aging hippies. And the generation before us aging hippies, I would call the civil libertarians who laid the intellectual groundwork for the human rights struggles. And both of us need to come to terms with the rising generation. How do we listen to them and include them in our great tradition? We have things to teach them, as our forefathers and foremothers like Channing have taught us, but they also have things to teach us. They have seen where our actions have fallen short of our idealism and have come up with an idealism of their own. Our denomination throughout October is encouraging congregations to figure out how we can get our message to young adults. Their program for this is called Mind the Gap. They suggest that we do a pretty good job of addressing the needs of young children and adults over age 35. But there is a gap between 18 and 35 that we have ignored. And your order of service indicates one way that you can support this effort. But we need to think of how we can do this locally as well. Young adults need to know that there is a place that welcomes free thinking and free religion. We need to be reacquainted with the energy that they have around issues that are important to us. Not all young people will embrace us, but I think those who consider themselves as alternative are our best prospects. We need to be aware that there are those who are in need of our message. And it's hard to think of how we focus our message to different demographics. And sometimes we think that certain demographics might not find us. I mean, our comfortable demographic are, white intellectuals over 40. But even most white intellectuals over 40 aren't Unitarian Universalists. Our message is hard because it requires personal responsibility. But there are young adults who need an alternative religion. There are gays and lesbians, bisexual and transgendered people who need an alternative religion. There are Hispanics that need an alternative religion. There are blacks who need an alternative religion. We do not need to change our message. We need to believe it. If we are going to preach that we're inclusive of all people, we should actively try to do so. Our message is a good message. All people should be encouraged to be themselves and change the world. Freedom is scary, but the alternative is scarier. Every demographic in our society has a minority yearning to be free. Authors Paul Ray and Sherry Ruth Anderson call these people cultural creatives, people with an independent spirit that have yet to realize that they can change the world. Cultural creatives care deeply about ecology and saving the planet, about relationships, peace, social justice, and about self-actualization, spirituality, and self-expression. Surprisingly, they are both inner-directed and activists, volunteers and contributors to good causes more than other Americans. However, because they've been so invisible in American life, cultural creatives themselves are astonished to find out how many share both their values and their way of life. The authors estimate that there are up to 50 million cultural creatives in this country. People who are UUs but don't know it. If these authors are right, our movement must be prepared to welcome the influx of individuals yearning to be free. These people seeking deeper meanings, and ours is one of the few institutions that's flexible enough to welcome the new and innovative ideas. But in order to do this, we ourselves need to change, because there is a certain self-righteousness in being alternative. Alternative music groups who sell too many records begin to be looked at with suspicion. It's fun to scream that we want to be the minority and down with the moral majority. We are comfortable as a denomination of being the small gadfly advocating for change. Are we willing to transform ourselves into a catalyst for change? The leaven in the bread that causes it to rise, the salt that gives the world its flavor. Being an angry snake can separate us from the majority. But then we must be willing to be as tender as doves in order to transform it. We have a history of open eyes. We enjoy being the dissenter. But we need to learn to enjoy to have our arms wide open and welcome the dissenters from all walks of life. Can we let ourselves be transformed and thus transform the world? Perhaps in this next generation, the alternative will become mainstream. And now we're going to sing a hymn. It's number 372, 374, 376, and 380. But we decided to write it out in the order of service so it's easier to